Hello, 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 hello. Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. We are so excited for tonight's edition on dyslexia global conversation. I am so excited, and if you are excited as I am, whether you are watching us on YouTube or you are live with us today on Zoom, please share in comments, and also on YouTube, share in comments if you are excited, because I am very, very excited for tonight. Tonight, our guest here is going to blow our mind. But first of all, my name is Rosalind Chirenate. I'm the founder of Africa Dyslexia Organization. I am dyslexic, and we have over here Josiah, who is doing the sign language interpretation. Josiah is wearing white shirt, and he's seated down, as you can see, or you can hear me. He's seated down and he's signing with you. He's dark in complexion. And we have our guest here, Clarice Jackson. So Clarice is a phenomenal leader in the space of education, inclusive education, and to be specific, Black education, African education in general. She's a mom who has been on a journey with dyslexia with her daughter. She's going to share more about it. And she's the founder of Black Literacy Matters. Not all of that. She is also the founder for Decoding Nebraska in the USA, and she's had extensive experience in the space of dyslexia-related learning difficulty. She's an educator who assesses. She also does intervention for anyone who is dyslexic or have a learning challenge. If you want to know more about her, please just Google her. This woman has been on the forefront of championing Black literacy, and I can't wait for her to share her story with you and for you to know more about the work she's doing. She's an award-winning educator, and today let's all welcome Clarice to Dyslexia Global Conversation. And so Clarice, welcome, and the floor is yours. Tell us a bit about yourself. I know that I've made your profile very short, but we want to feel more about you. What even led you into this space of advocacy and becoming a professional in the space? We love you and welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Rosalind. What a wonderful introduction. I'm truly humbled by it. I'm so glad to be a part of this conversation. Africa is near and dear to my heart. I've never been to Accra or at all. I hope to get there. And so I love what the internet and Zoom and Facebook is able to do. It's able to bridge the divide, location wise, and allow us all to come together and commune and to talk and to have these type of conversations. So I'm excited. You did a fabulous job introducing me. I am, first and foremost, a parent of two children. My son just graduated from the university here in the US of A with a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. So that was exciting. I'm very proud of him. And as you mentioned, my daughter, she's the reason why literacy, that particular piece of education became my specific purpose. We all come with a general purpose in life, and then God, in his infinite wisdom, divinely gives us a specific purpose. And one of my specific purposes is literacy and or dyslexia. And it came from my experience navigating the educational system when it came to my daughter. And so that's how I got involved in this particular space. And then most recently, we had our first inaugural Black Literacy Matters conference. And that came about because we know that dyslexia impacts all races, all dialects, but it is more prevalent in minority communities here in the United States and also internationally. And so that is why Rosalind does the wonderful work that she does and has just made great strides. I'm so impressed by you, Rosalind. We met a little less than a month ago, and you were talking to me about what I could bring. I said, you're doing it. You are doing the work. You are me in Acura. And so if you think highly of me, as you have just said, then you absolutely must think highly of yourself. And so I just want to commend you on the fabulous work that you are doing. And it's exactly like what you have done. You have an experience with dyslexia. You have children. You yourself are dyslexic. I'm not dyslexic, but the experience with my daughter caused me, one, to advocate for her. And then once I was able to figure out the why, which was dyslexia, and get her the help she needed, I felt compelled by God to go back and pull others out of that despair of illiteracy and feeling dumb and stupid and like something was wrong with them. And kids, I didn't want any child to feel that way. And so that is the driving force and why I do what I do. And so, in the respects for Black literacy, it's such a huge issue that one, we have the general literacy deficit, but then it's even more compacted for people of color. And so I wanted to make sure that we addressed that we highlighted that we begin to change that and eliminate it because it's something that can be eliminated. Illiteracy does not have to exist. It is here because structured literacy and information and trained teachers, tutors, administrators on the topic of structured literacy have not reached the educational systems and schools like it needs to. And so that's what my purpose is to eradicate that, to improve the lives of the professionals who are charged with educating our children, and to make sure that all children can read.
Wow. So make sure that all children can read. And it just made me reflect on the power of just waking up and saying that I am going to create change. And you use the experience that you had with your daughter and say that I have to do something not to just benefit my daughter, but I have
Yeah.
to do something to benefit everyone. And that is so powerful. And I've seen even a lot of dyslexics who have grown up and become very great is that their
Yeah.
parents, one of the parents or two of them just woke up and said, we're not going to entertain this. We're going to advocate for our child and be behind to our child succeed. And so if
Yeah.
you're parents watching us today, I just want to encourage you that as soon as you find out your child challenges, do not sit and wait that somebody is going to create the change for you. The first change happens with you and your family. And
Yeah.
once you have that acceptance and you're ready to step forward, that is when you can even go to the school and advocate for your child. So do not waste time. I'll bring you back, Paris, to share in that moment, like you have your daughter, she's
Mhm.
going to school. What was that hit moment that you experienced and you were like, oh my goodness, we gotta have to do something about this? What was that moment? What were you experiencing about your child?
Well, I've shared the story with you, so I'll briefly share it with all of you all that are watching and listening in. I was a reading specialist at the public school when I was very, very young. Don't want to date myself, but it was over 30 years ago. And so I just graduated high school. I was in college, and going through it as far as wanting to obtain a teaching degree. That was my plan. That's what I thought. I loved education, and I thought that's what I was going to do. And so my dad was a teacher in the traditional public school setting, and he had been one for 34 years. So it was in my blood. It was in my blood. So I was just sitting there like, I am going to uh, that's what I'm going to do. So I started working at a public school system. And in the process of doing that, this little girl walks into my classroom. And she was in the second grade. Her name was Letitia. And I had the alphabet on the board, and she started giving me the letters of the alphabet that didn't match. And at first I thought, well, I'm a new Title I reading specialist, and I think she's probably just joking, trying to test me to see how I'm going to respond. But she really wasn't. She really did not know the alphabet. She could not, she had no letter naming skills at all. And she was questioning me as she gave me an answer, saying, so essentially saying, is this an M? Is this a B? And so I was perplexed by that, because again, I came from the mindset that, teachers go to colleges or university, as you all would say over there, and they are educated, they are given the tools and the skills needed to teach children to read, write, and spell. And so to see a little girl in the second grade who couldn't do any of that, I was perplexed by that. But I learned through asking questions of the administration at that time that she had had failing grades since pre-kindergarten, because they do pre-K over here. I don't know if they do that there. So it's pre-K, then kindergarten, then first, second, and so on. And I was like, how do you get to the second grade unable to read? And so that began the journey of her and I developed a relationship with her and her grandmother, who she stayed with at the time. Her grandmother was raising 5 of her grandchildren, and the grandma had less than a sixth grade education herself. And so she was really struggling trying to raise those children, and then trying to advocate for them was just something that she was unable to do. And so I started doing it and trying to figure out how to help her. And we developed a relationship where she started coming home with me, and she started calling me mom. And I didn't have any kids at the time, or any husband or anything like that, but it was God. I'll just say that it was a God connection. And so when her mother, who was incarcerated, and that's why the grandmother had her, she got out. She asked me, she said, would you become her mother? Because you can give her what I can't give her. And she needs you. And I was kind of shocked when she first said it. I was like, you really would give her to me? And she's like, yeah, I know you'll do better for her than I could. And so I had a conversation with my parents, because again, I was very young, and you need a support system when you are raising children. I don't care how old or how young you are, you need a support system. And so I asked my parents if they would support me in my decision to take her as my daughter. And they supported me in that. And so she became my daughter at the age of 9 and moved in with me. And so that's when the advocacy journey took another step up. And on that journey, I found that the school system really could not answer me and answer her why she struggled to read. They were not acknowledging or addressing dyslexia. And so she went a whole nother year, and I thought maybe if I put her in special education. And in the United States of America, special education is defined as specifically designed instruction to meet the unique needs of a child. And so I got her tested, and she tested into special education in the area of specific learning disability, which is one of the 13 disability categories. And within that particular category is the term dyslexia, but they weren't acknowledging that term. And it also includes reading comprehension, decoding, encoding, blending, segmenting, all of those things. And so my belief at that time was, I've done it. I've gotten her into special education. They're going to use specifically designed instruction, and she's going to learn how to read. And to my surprise, a year later, she was in the same shape and state that she was when she went in. And that's when the mother advocacy came out in a different level. And I said, this is unacceptable. And my daughter doesn't have anything intellectually wrong with her that would prevent her from learning to read. And the fact that you have had from pre-K to now fourth grade and she can't read simple 2 and 3 letter words is unacceptable, and I will not accept it. And so I started looking outside the system, and that's when I learned about the term dyslexia and multisensory education. And I found a private school locally that addressed our needs, and she went to that school, and in 1 year she went from a non-reader to a third grade reader. And that forever changed my life. It changed her life, because with the right method, with the right approach, your children, for all of you parents and teachers, administrators, or students in Accra and or wherever you're watching from, if there is a situation similar to what you're hearing right now, know that your child, your student, your classrooms, your district can change the narrative for children who struggle to read. And we will not accept no for an answer. And more specifically, when it comes to children of color, when it comes to different language dialects, we can ensure still that Black literacy matters, and that all children learning to read can be done, should be done, and can eradicate the literacy gap, not in the next lifetime that some other generation would have to pick up and take, but in this one.
Wow, 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 wow. There is so much I am writing down here that you have said, and it's like you even go into the next question I have and I want to ask, and it's so beautiful. But one thing that touched me so well,
Mhm.
I wish I had you when I was in
No.
school, is paying attention to students. And I think a lot of our educators don't have this quality. And if you're watching this and you are an educator in
Mhm.
whatever capacity you are, is pay attention and show genuine interest. This girl was there asking you, is this A? Is this B? And you are like, what is she trying to do?
Yeah.
But then you didn't stop there. You observed, you listened, and even listened to your heart and to see how could I support this child.
Yes.
I remember very well when a teacher was teaching French. This teacher knew already that I wasn't good in reading, and so I was very poor in other subjects. But she was so adamant that you need to know my subjects. And one time she just was like, restate what I have told you in French. Read it. And I couldn't. And she started caning me and caning me and caning me. And the cane got broken. And I remember it so much. When it got broken, I thought, oh, thank you, Lord. This is it. She's stopping. And she took off her shoe and continued hitting me with the shoe. And
Oh my goodness.
yeah,
Oh,
I
that's
remember,
dramatic. I know.
and her stature so well. And she started hitting me. And you were here, you observed, you kind of questioned it in your mind. What is this child trying to do? And then you was like, how can I help? To the extent that it's not even how can I help, it went on to be like, take this child as your own. And that is so powerful. And God bless you for that.
No, thank you. Thank you.
God
Thank
bless you for that. So, teachers, you may not be in the position to adopt a child. That is not what we're saying here. But I believe you have the opportunity in any child or adult that you meet, whether you're teaching adults who are now starting their education or children, you have that opportunity to make a change in somebody's life. And it could be as little as you telling the person that you can do it. Just try harder. Try a little more. You can do it. And Clarice has just exhibited that so well here. And I know most, like the full story and even how it turned out and how brave she is and standing to say that I am going to keep doing this until the day that it's I'm no more. And so, Clarice, congratulations. Well done. God bless you. And may the good Lord take care of you and your own and anything that is on your heart.
Amen. Well, thank you for that. I received that.
My next question to you is, you took their child to another place and she started receiving support. Why didn't you stop there? Why did you set up the center? If I remember the voice center, the
Voice
voice,
Advocacy Center.
yeah.
Yeah.
Why did you set it up? You should have just, your daughter had received the support. You're an educator, just focus on teaching. But why did you set up the center?
I feel like it was a God inspired choice. He gave me the choice when it was time to say, because I actually left the school system. That's the part I didn't share prior to becoming my daughter's mom. And when I left, that didn't stop my connection to her. We were still connected, but I left the school system at that time and I started working somewhere else. And while I was sitting at work one day, the Lord spoke to me. I'm a woman of faith, and so I can't tell the story without mentioning how God instructed me in this process. And so He asked me the question. He said, "So what are you going to do about Letitia?" That's my daughter's name. Are you going to act as if what you know about her didn't happen, or are you going to do something about it? And the way I talk to God, we have a relationship. So I was like, well, God, well, you really isn't a choice if you put it to me like that. I don't have a choice. I mean, if you say that, just leave her there. I'm not going to leave her there. And so he gave me the analogy of her being in a foreign land and not knowing the language. And that's how she was sitting in that classroom every day, because she did not understand, nor could she decipher the English code. And so I made the decision based off God's question to me to make sure that I advocated for her. And so once I took her out of that school system, put her in that private school, and that year turnaround and that difference when the regular schools had her for 5 years and could do nothing with her educationally as far as it pertained to literacy, that impacted me so powerfully. And I thought about the long hours at home her and I spent, where she would sit there and hit herself in the head and talk about how stupid she was. Because whether you tell a child or not, if they are struggling with literacy, you don't ever have to tell them that. You can tell them that they are the smartest thing that you have ever met. They won't believe that. They will internalize socially and emotionally the fact that they cannot read, and it brings on a shame, and they believe that there is something wrong with them, and they begin to believe that they are stupid. And so even though I would tell my daughter, you're not stupid, you just learn differently, I had to prove to her, not only through what I said, but actually in finding her the help that she needed, and for her to see that she wasn't stupid. She just learned a different way. And so when that happened, and we were riding in the car, driving places, and she went from not saying anything besides listening to music in the car to seeing street signs and saying, that's State Street, that's Grant Street. And she became empowered to read for herself. And I just saw the difference in her. And I didn't want another family to go through what we went through. I didn't want another child to feel like my daughter felt. I didn't want to see another parent have to try to figure it out and navigate and research and go outside of systems to try to figure out what is preventing my daughter from reading or my son from reading. What is the problem? And so I wanted to be the answer. I think that what purpose is, and I think Dr. Miles Monroe said this. I don't know if you know who that is, but he used to be a renowned preacher. And he said, purpose is a problem that needs to be fixed. And so that was the purpose that God gave me. And that was to help fix the issue with literacy and to make sure that parents and children discovered that if it is in fact dyslexia, then this is how you address it, and that it doesn't have to be this this nightmare of a time for families and students. And so that's what I did. I love to see the interpreter. He is doing a fabulous job, and the animation, I love it. It is just great. I love it. I love it. But yeah, that's what happened. And so I really feel like for the parents out there, you often think that the educators are the best and the most effective voice for your children. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. Parents are a child's best advocate. No one knows your child better than you. Yes, teachers and administrators and anyone connected in the educational system should be respected. They have gone to school to learn how to do certain things, but they don't know everything. And what we found, and it's still partly a problem here in the United States, and I know that it is still an issue in Africa, is that most educators are leaving the university and they are not being taught the ways to teach structured literacy. So there is a method and there is a code that all teachers need to know and be empowered with, so that when they reach our classrooms and they have these students in there, that these students are being taught in the most effective way, what we know that science and evidence suggest is the best ways to teach reading. That is how we should be addressing our students.
Wow. 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 Purpose is a problem that needs to be fixed. I love it so much. And thank you for all that you're sharing. Audience, if you have questions, please start putting them in the comment section. If you're watching on Zoom with us live here, or if you are on YouTube, please put your questions there. We will be getting to the Q&As very soon. And if you are live with us here in the studio, please, if you want to raise your hand and you want to ask question without typing, then please also raise your hand and we'll give you the opportunity to ask the question. But be ready to put on your camera so we see your beautiful face. The next phase we're going in is very exciting. We are going to listen to why it is so important to advocate for Black literacy. And so my next question for you is that why is Black literacy so important? And what unique challenge does the Black community face that you think at this point in our life, we need to address this? We cannot move on like that.
Yes, I would say from the perspective of the United States, and then we'll translate it over to Africa. But it's still it's so God and his finite wisdom, and it's even as I'm saying this right now that I'm just seeing how the puzzle is fitting and coming together. But historically, we know that African Americans were taken from the motherland and brought over by Europeans to the United States and put into slavery. And during the 400 plus years of slavery, one of the main things that the slave owners and the colonizers used and armed against our people was the thing of learning to read. And so that was considered a right denied to us. And so unless you were in what was called the big house and you weren't in the fields, and your master or the missus or the children didn't sneak off and try to attempt to teach us as slaves how to read, we were without education and literacy. And so once slavery was abolished, one of the things that was most important, it was precious. And that's what we have to bring back to Black literacy. It was considered an absolute honor, something to aspire to be able to read, write, and spell. And so even after slavery was abolished and then states were supposed to be accepting and inclusive of us as African Americans who were removed from Africa, they continued to deny us the right to read. And so they created anti-literacy laws. And including Virginia was one of the first places that they had anti-literacy laws where it was against the law. You could be fined $100 at that time, which would equate to over $100,000 now or more. But back then, that's what it equated to. And if you were caught teaching a slave to read, you would go be fined and or experience jail time, because they did not want us to read, because what they realized is literacy is liberty. When a person knows how to read and they have knowledge and they are able to obtain knowledge, there is nothing they are incapable of doing. And they did not want us to be empowered in that way. And so during those times, once slavery was over with, between about 1865 and for the next 30 or 40 years, what we as post-slaves, our ancestors rather, what our ancestors were able to do in that time has never been done again in the history of mankind. And that was to take what we didn't have then, which was the ability to read, and they took our illiteracy rate from 96% illiterate to 45% in a 30-year time span. And it has never been done again until now. And that is why I know that with everything that we hear about why the Black literacy rates for students in the United States is so low in comparison to their racial counterparts is an absolute lie. Because, and I will tell you why. It's an absolute lie to say that our children, because this is what we hear as it pertains to Black literacy here in the United States, that our children can't obtain the right to read and they struggle with it because they are in poverty. And we know that poverty does not discriminate. It doesn't care what race you are. And so poverty does not discriminate according to what locality you are in. There's poverty in Africa. There's poverty here in the United States. And so one of their excuses is it's poverty. That's the reason why white children have a higher literacy rate than Black children. And they have been spreading that, and they have been teaching this, and they've been sharing this. And so then what happens is, then you go from the cause, what is causing children not to read, write, and spell, and then they change it to the effects. What are the effects of not reading, writing, and spelling? And so they begin to try to address the effects without dealing with the root. And the root of the matter is, it doesn't matter if you are in poverty. It doesn't matter if you've had traumatic events that have happened in your life. And unfortunately, at some point, all of us are going to experience some level of trauma. It may not be major trauma. And thank God if you never have to experience that. But you will experience certain things at certain times. But that, again, is not a reason for you not to be able to read, write, and spell. So they use poverty, they use trauma, they use access. And they say that these are the reasons why in today's society, children can't read, write, and spell. And so like I told you just a minute ago when we talked about the history of anti-literacy, you tell me any other race in the history of mankind who was enslaved for 400 years, who was beaten, whose wives were raped, and their children were taken from them. I don't know of any worse trauma in the history of mankind than that. I also don't know when we talk about poverty, having to live on the slave owner's land and in shacks and given bare scraps to take and create meals out of. That's poverty. We know that that happened as well. And through all of that, when we were allowed to be free people, we were emancipated and slavery was ended, and we had an opportunity to obtain the right to read, write, and spell, we eradicated the illiteracy rate from 96% to 45%. And has never been reduced from that time zone. And so there is nothing today that will ever compare to that. And even in those conditions, literacy still was obtainable. And so it's unacceptable to say and to use those reasonings, not saying that they don't have merit, but they are not an excuse to say and comply with the fact that we have over 80 to 96% of Black students in the United States, in every single state, who are not proficient in reading. Is unacceptable. And it will not continue on my watch and the movement of Black Literacy Matters. We take that over to international and we talk about different dialects. Same thing. We are still able to ensure that children learn to read. And we have to reject statements and notions that bring excuses for why we're not able to do that. And we have to come together as a people and say, no, that doesn't add up. And we're going to ensure that every child learns to read, dialect or not.
Wow. Wow. I am sure I am not the only one who is just wondering, like, how come I didn't know all this history and background information? I think we all need to join the Black Literacy Matter movement and
Yes.
really push this there. And I mean it because it is not only for the US.
Right.
It is for everywhere that we have Black people. Why am I saying this? When it came to education, who introduced it to us is the same people who brought it. And I remember a friend who writes African children's story. She said, I am going to make sure I push this forward because even in the books that we read, I don't see anybody who resemble us. And it is what
Yes.
somebody have chosen to educate us on is what they publish and send to us. And so then I don't have people that are looking at us. So even though it happens in the US, it transcends back to us here as to what are we learning?
Yes.
Are we learning to make change or are we just learning because everybody has to learn? But I was quite sad about the statistics you were talking about. And I am so shocked that that is going on in the US like today.
Today, yes, it is. And it's so anyone that I share those statistics with, they are shocked because what you get is the reverse. You get when schools and school districts are putting out data, what they will share is they won't say 88% of Black students aren't proficient in reading, which means they're not meeting minimum standards. They won't tell you that. What they'll say is, well, 17% of our students are advanced in reading. They won't give you the flip of that. They want to give you the nicety of it, and to some extent, I understand that. I mean, who's going to promote what's not great, right? But at the same time, parents who love these children and the children who are sitting in these classrooms who do not have an appropriate literacy intervention or literacy instruction. Let's not even say intervention. So disregard that. We don't need intervention if we taught children using the proper instruction. There would be no need for intervention. So in the United States, what has happened is children go to school, and when they don't fit into that approximately 33% of kids who can just kind of figure out how to read through guessing, because that's what's been happening in the United States and elsewhere and internationally. We're using methods that are not evidence-based, that there is no scientific research behind that shows that this is the way that the brain learns to understand how to read, write, and spell. And so here historically in the United States, the National Institutes of Health over 50 years ago, determined there are essential components to reading that all children need. Doesn't matter what race, doesn't matter what color, doesn't matter what creed, doesn't matter what culture, doesn't matter what dialect you come from. There are 5 essential components of reading that all children need to become successful readers. That's phonemic awareness, vocabulary, fluency, comprehension. We need all of that, and phonics. And when you deviate from that and you start using other methods that literacy lobbyists push and promote, that these creators of reading curriculums put together that had none of those components, or maybe one of or two of those components, but lacked others. So we've had approaches out that show that you learn to read by picture clues, which is inaccurate. Every book, everything that you read is not going to always have a visual aid with it. And so you can't learn to read just by pictures. And then there was another concept that says, you learn to read by guessing, and just guess the words around you, or memorizing. And we know that for children with dyslexia, a lot of children have issues with memorization, and trying to hold within their memory bank what a word means. But it had no reasoning behind the whys of reading. Like, why does 2 letters that come together make one sound? That's called a digraph. But they're not teaching any of that. Teachers didn't have that knowledge. So teachers can't give students what they themselves don't have. And so that's why it's so important that before teachers are leaving university or colleges of education, that we ensure that they are trained in the science of reading. You have to know the code in order to teach the code. And you have to learn, they have to be taught how to teach the code, so that when they have a girl or a boy in the classroom who's struggling, they don't sit there and say, the only thing that I know to do is to refer you on to special education. And unfortunately, we were referring kids on to special education who they themselves, as special educators, didn't have the training either. So then you see generational cursing, generational illiteracy begin to happen, which impacts everything. Because what does literacy not intersect with? Name one thing you can do in this world that does not require literacy. Name it. You can't. It is so powerful. And I'm getting stirred up as I'm talking about this, but it is so detrimental to it's a basic need. Beyond food, water, and shelter, literacy is a basic need. If you don't know how to read, your life is forever enabled and changed. I read a powerful study about the research that was done again over 50 years ago, when they conducted this reading panel in the United States about how do children best learn to read, and what should we recommend and require that all literacy instruction has. One researcher said, and did a study, and he said, the life expectancy of individuals is severely shortened when they live illiterate and in poverty. It will shorten your life. Is that not powerful? And so I take this so seriously that when I created Voice Advocacy Center after my journey with my daughter in 2012, I created Voice Advocacy Center to be a beacon of hope and a place and a refuge for parents to run into, because I understood the way the system works here in the United States, that you have to change legislation. And then the interpretation of what was legislatively approved is then another issue, because you can write out a bill and get a law passed, but then it's based on who interprets it. How is it interpreted? Because then that's what manifests in the school systems. And if it's misinterpreted, or if there's not enough language or context that truly defines and regulates how they determine that, you could still be without appropriate literacy intervention. And so a lot of legislation has been passed here in the last, I'd say, 10 years or so. Powerful stuff. We have moved the needle, but we haven't moved it enough when we have, like I said, almost 80 to 96% of Black students in every single state in the United States who cannot read proficiently. And then when we talk about the motherland and the dialect and the fact that we have these remote areas where children are not really in school environments where that they can get this information. And then we talk about access, because that's part of the thing. It's so strong in, Africa. Access is a huge issue. Access to appropriate interventions and education. And so our children, our Black students specifically, are suffering. And I, for one, am not going to be able to sit in my home and live comfortably and feel like, oh, I taught my daughter to read. My son just graduated from college. And I know that if I do nothing and I live my life and I leave this world, I'm leaving children and generations of families in the dark because I chose not to. And I can't live with that.
Wow.
I will not live with that. So that's why I do what I do.
Wow. Wow. I see the reason why Jennifer Topper was like, Rosalind, I met someone. Clarice, check her out. I saw her and I saw Rosalind, and I have the same feeling. I'm like, I struggled. I've come to know. And then what do? Sit down, don't do anything, let people suffer. I feel there is always a call for someone to say that enough is enough. It doesn't matter if they are my family. It doesn't matter if they are my kids. We're going to do something. And that is what you just did. And the amazing advocates and volunteers that we have around us, they all believe in the vision and are together with us to champion this cause. So I am so happy and privileged to be connected to you, seriously, because I know there is a direction we're going to get and how to do things together. And I am just looking forward to it. But this even conversation alone has opened my mind to the different level that I'm like, oh, I thought I knew, but it's much deeper than I have perceived all this while. And that tells that the work we're doing has to even intensify to achieve our goals and the purpose that we are. So thank you so much for sharing. Viewers, we are still on Dyslexia Global Conversation. I think this is not a conversation to have in an hour. This is a conversation that, you really have like a platform like we do the Dyslexia Education Stakeholders Forum, and just give her the platform to share and share and share so that we
I'd
can
love
get
to.
so that we can get all that we need from her. You touched on something that I really was like, you said the educator, if they don't know, how do they support?
Exactly. They
And
can't.
so, yeah, they can't. So it's right from the training colleges, the universities that are training our teachers. And I always say this, that even the lecturer teaching the teacher to become a teacher needs to be retrained, needs
Absolutely.
to be reoriented. Because if I am being trained by somebody who has not teach me phonics, and I graduate and come out, I can't teach my kids phonics. And so we need to re-look into things in a different perspective so that we can support. That's why we are very key on teacher training and development and creating that awareness for them to understand that this is not a joke. If we take dyslexia alone, it's a 1 in 5. That is so huge, about 20% of people. So why aren't we doing this? And for you even narrating this history and giving the insight, I feel like it's more than the 20 we are looking at. There's so much work we need to do. And so at this point, we are almost exhausting our time. But you've said a lot about Black literacy, your vision, and everything. But I want you to restate again, what change do you want to see happen? And how can we support, we on the continent, how can we support, make that change happen? And we will be so happy to rally behind it.
Well, the vision for Black Literacy Matters is one to eliminate the literacy gap between Black students, Black families. I mean, because literacy impacts the whole family. So we want to make sure that first and foremost that our schools are ensuring that we are teaching our Black students in an evidence-based way how to read, write, and spell. And we know that if we do that, similar to other cultures, that even if English isn't the first language of the parents or the mothers or the fathers, that the children having that will then impact and help not only their immediate family, but for generations to come. And so we want to holistically look at the entire family and ensure that families are literate, because we know that for dyslexia runs in families and it's hereditary. So if your daughter or your son is illiterate, I mean not illiterate, but that's part of it with dyslexia, that we address that. Because guess what that does? If we educate and we make sure that we are telling our students, and that's important, we got to name this for them. Why is it important to name this? And I really want you guys to hear this. To say that my son or my daughter or that you yourself are dyslexic is nothing to be ashamed about, because dyslexia has nothing to do with intellect, meaning it has nothing to do with how smart or how dumb you are. Most people who are dyslexic have above average IQ. And so we have to detach from those negative associations that maybe the mind or other people who don't have knowledge would say. If you use the term dyslexia, use it, because it names and defines what it is you are addressing. And what it also does is empowers your students to one day be advocates for themselves and possibly the next generation and the generation after that. If you don't know what you're fighting, you can't truly fight it and overcome it and win. So that's the first thing. That's why you name it. That's why you accept what it is. And then you can address it, attack it, and eradicate it, and ensure that it doesn't follow you from generation to generation. Because if your kids know that, and then they grow up and then they begin to see these characteristics in their children, they'll remember, this is what my mom and my dad talked to me about. And this is what school told me. It's dyslexia. I see these characteristics in my children now. So I don't have to run and try to figure it out and be confused and allow my children to go to maybe 2, 3 grade levels. And then I learn that they really can't read and I don't know why. You know the why, and they will know the why. And then if it continues to happen, because it's hereditary, generations will know the why and it will eliminate itself. It will get fixed much quicker and much sooner when we know what we're attacking and what we're addressing.
Wow, I love it. And I hope some of our leaders will chance on this uh, recording and watch it and learn something. We need a lot of education here in Africa. And
I will say that, Rosalind, I don't want to cut you off, but you asked me a question about what I saw with Black literacy, and I want to make sure that I say this.
yeah,
Access is one of the key things that I feel very strongly about as it pertains to um, getting resources and help and support both nationally and internationally. And so access, there's remote areas, there's children that do not have the socioeconomic means to get a tutor or to go to a specialized school. And that is universal. Access when families in Africa are in remote areas or their children are not going to public school or they can't afford to send them to boarding school, but they are in private educational settings. It is my mission and my purpose to ensure that we create access to structured literacy everywhere so that children, again, all children learn to read.
wow, access. And I'm glad you touched on access. You are so right. The access is not there. And even like this recording, for example, it's still not going to be accessible to a lot of people, majority of people, because those of us who live in urban area that is able to afford a device and internet is less than the people who don't have access to it. And so we really need to do a good job from the policy level and transcending it into practice and implementation. We really need to do a good job. So regardless of your location, you can benefit. Recently, an organization contacted us. They have a fantastic training and want to partner us. And some of my questions is, this is a web-based training. How do we get this training to majority of people who don't have access to internet? Are you willing to invest in some form of devices or platform that we can access the training without going on internet? And that's where that conversation ceased.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so access is very, very important. And our governments can do better in these areas. If,
Yes.
especially with Africa, if we want to move forward and catch up with what is happening around the world, we need to work on our resource and assets. Because
Yes.
if that is not in place, it will just be policies sitting on desk and it's not going to go anywhere. And so I'm so glad you touched on that. We have a really interesting question for you in the chat. And Adunola is asking, could she talk a little bit on special education law if you have an idea about special education law or policies?
Yes. Is there a specific question about special education? I do know a lot about it. I was serving actually on the East Coast. I did it for a number of years as an adjunct summer instructor for the Special Education Law and Advocacy Institute at William and Mary Law School. And there is a well-known lawyer, attorney, his name is Pete Wright, and he has a phenomenal website with a lot of information about different educational issues, anything from ADHD to ADD to anything that you want to know. And it's at wrightslaw.com, and that's WRIGHTSLAW.com, wrightslaw.com. And so that particular website was very, very helpful to me when I started my journey in trying to navigate the special education systems, because special education is a separate educational law, and parents have rights and responsibilities that are entailed and detailed within that specific law. In the United States, that law is called IDEA, which stands for the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And so that law then is passed down to local states, and they create their interpretation of that law into their policies, and it is something that schools have to be guided by. And so when you attend what is called in the United States an individualized education plan meeting, an IEP meeting, it has different names in different states, but it's the same thing. That's just a meeting where you have all those who have direct contact with a child, and you discuss their special needs, and you create what's called the IEP, which is a contract that says, these are the goals and these are the things that we're going to work on. And by the time we get done with this, we project that your child will have raised their educational standard, whether that's in reading or that's in writing, spelling, speech, whatever area in special education they're on. But the issue is that those particular contracts, they have to be monitored, and parents are the forerunner of that. Just because your child is in special education, you need to ensure that whatever their recommendations and promises within that contract, because if it's not written, it's not said. So whatever you are agreeing to and that is being discussed, make sure that it's in writing, number one, so that in the event that you have to come back and say, hey, you said that my child was going to be able to do A, B, C, and D, they are not meeting that expectation. So I'm holding you accountable for that, and you need to change that. But they won't do that, or they don't always do that. Let me be fair. And so they need you to make sure that you're monitoring that. You need to ask questions. Ask them, okay, my child was at what reading level when they started this particular curriculum? And here we are 3 months in. Make sure you do that. That's what we call monitoring. And have they moved the needle? Are they making progress? By the time you get to half the school year, if your child is using a program and you are doing your part, and you're monitoring and keeping up with it and asking the appropriate questions, and your child still has not made any progress, then that intervention is not the best program for them. They need to switch it. But if you don't monitor and they tell you, hey, this is what we're doing with your kid, they're in special education, and this is how we're handling, and you just let it go and you don't do anything, you could get to the end of the year and your child could have been using a program that has not helped them in any way. And what has transpired is they have wasted an entire year on a method that didn't help them in one bit. So special education is a whole other topic that I can definitely at another time in another space that will be more conducive address any conversations or questions that you all have, and even give you a session on special education advocacy and how to appropriately do that. I would love to do that. I hope that that's somehow answers your question. I'm not sure if it does.
I love it. And I have just put in it here. We're bringing you back on special education law and having a section on it. This will be so great for our teachers and also our advocates to know about it, and also parents as well. So parents can know their rights to advocate for their children. We are wrapping up the questions. Some of the questions she's answered already, especially Gabana from Botswana. I don't want you to feel I've ignored you, but your question on what must be done in Africa in general to improve literacy, I believe she has answered it, but I don't know if Clarice have something to add to that but I feel like she has answered that question. Maybe you touched on that when you are taking this question. A parent, I'm sure Helda is asking, what is the best? And Helda is watching from YouTube. She's asking, what is the best policy for parents to read? What is the best place for parents to read and listen more about dyslexia and strong reading instruction?
There's an array of resources out there. I would say if you're going to be looking outside of Africa, or if you're in the United States, I'd say the International Dyslexia Association is a great resource. The National Center on Improving Literacy is another website. I don't have their website names, but just Google the name, it'll come up. National Center on Improving Literacy. I used to serve on that advisory board, and I know some phenomenal people that work there right now. And it is a federally funded organization that just gives out free information on structured literacy, dyslexia. It's got a number of resources. You can get all the things that you need from there. Another organization is Decoding Dyslexia, and we have those in every state in the United States. I'm the president and founder of Decoding Dyslexia in Nebraska, and it's a parent-led grassroots support group that helps parents navigate the journey of having a child or dealing with a student if you are a teacher in that. The Reading League is another organization. It attracts a lot of teachers, and it focuses on the science of reading. It's led by a phenomenal woman named Maria Murray, and I am a part of her Educator of Color cohort this year, and I will be speaking at the Reading League Conference in October. And then again, the International Dyslexia Association, Black Literacy Matters, will probably be speaking there at the end of October. And I think, and the Learning Disabilities Association of America is another entity. All of these entities can be, if you have access to the internet, and this person on YouTube clearly does, those are great resources to look into. And hopefully I haven't forgot any place, but I would say that. And you can always look at voiceadvocacycenter.org, blackliteracymatters.org, and we are on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter under those names.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Those are quite a lot of lists. Some that I know about them, and one or two that I just picked up. And I'm going to do my own readings as well. And if you're on the continent and you're looking for programs and resources, you could always reach out to Africa Dyslexia Organization, and we'll be able to support you. If you're not in touch with us already, and also, let's say, for example, you are in Kenya or Botswana or Tanzania, and you also want to be connected with an organization in your country, just sometimes you want somebody to talk to, please contact us as well, and we'll be able to put you in touch to our sister organizations and brother organizations that is around the continent as well, so you can learn. And of course, go follow the Voice Advocacy Center, the Black Literacy Martyr. And before we leave, we will ask Clarice also, how can you get in touch with her more? Aside her pages that she has put across. So thank you so much. Let's see. Oh, okay. Someone is asking, could she please repeat the site for the special education law so we could write it in the chat?
Okay, it is. I will type it in there.
Thank you so much.
Let me type it in here. It's not letting me type it, but it's Wright's Law, which is WRIGHTSLAW.com, wrightslaw.com. It is a site for Pete and Pam Wright. They are phenomenal individuals. And again, Pete Wright is dyslexic himself, and he advocates for all special education issues, but more specifically, he had a case revolving around dyslexia. And I think the woman's name, it was a court case, Supreme Court case, and it set the precedent for how schools and people should understand that dyslexia is a literacy issue and it needs to be addressed. And so this young lady named Shannon made it all the way to the 9th grade, unable to read, and had been in the traditional public school setting and in special education. And the judge found that she had been denied the right to read, and they had to pay the parents and then pay for her to be educated and learn to read, write, and spell. And so he has a wealth of information. You'll thoroughly get a lot out of that website.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. We are wrapping up. We are a little over our time, but it's always like that on Global Conversation when the conversation is so interesting and you feel like you do not want to stop. We can't let you go. There's so many things like you speak and I have questions, but I know you're a very busy person. We don't keep up your time here. So let me ask you this question that I cannot avoid. And this one, I had to write it because I want to get it right. What advice would you give to parents who has just started to navigate their child's dyslexia diagnosis? What advice? Why am I asking this question? We are in an African context where stigmatization is so huge over here. The moment you hear the word dyslexia, it sounds like some form of illness. And so sometimes even the acceptance is hard. And parents even bring themselves to diagnose their child. Moving forward is also a different journey altogether. So what advice do you have for these parents? You have done it before and you do it for everyone around you. Please help us.
I'm glad you asked that question. What I would say is number one, that no label can define you and put you in a box unless you allow it to. Words are very powerful, true indeed, but you don't have to allow a label to determine your trajectory. You need to take that label, which is now your understanding. The Bible says, in all you're getting, get an understanding, and look at it from that lens, because that's what I had to do. And not only did I need to understand what dyslexia was and wasn't, I also had to make sure that I kept in my forefront that just because I am now of the understanding of what dyslexia is and isn't, everybody is not of that mindset. So for families out there that are just starting out in this, understand this, just as you are learning about dyslexia and this is now your introduction to it, there are many, many people who dyslexia is not impacting, who may never know that term except for by you. So you now have to be what you call an advocate. You have to be an educator. You have to raise awareness for people around you to change their false narrative of what they consider the label as negativity. It's not negative. It is a way for you to understand what to address and how to address it, and then use your experience, just like I'm doing here right now, to share with other people. And then that changes how people view and look at a determination of dyslexia. Because before we started talking about dyslexia and saying dyslexia and making dyslexia, normalizing it, people, of course, if people don't understand something, they're going to shun from it. If you don't have a proper understanding of what dyslexia is or isn't, then you will think that it is the worst thing ever. It is not. And then you have to empower the children. I don't care how young they are. When you realize they have dyslexia, begin to talk to them and share with them what dyslexia isn't. Dyslexia does not mean you're stupid. Dyslexia does not mean that there's something wrong with you. It just, and I've always told my daughter this, and she began to believe it. And other children begin to believe it that come through Voice Advocacy Center. Those kids come in with some of the lowest self-esteem, and their social and emotional health is very, very poor. They don't think very highly of themselves. But when you empower them and show them that you can, in fact, learn to read, write, and spell, the way you were taught to read, write, and spell was wrong. That's not your fault. It's not the fault of a parent, because sometimes you think, okay, because dyslexia is hereditary, did I in some way genetically pass this on to my kid? And then you take on that burden yourself and you feel bad as a parent. You have no control over that. That is not your fault. It's not your child's fault that they have dyslexia. So what you need to do is embrace the definition and make sure that you have an accurate lens, an accurate view, an accurate understanding of what it is or isn't. And if you don't know, reach out to organizations such as Rosalind's or mine or some of the names that I gave you, and learn about what dyslexia is so that you can be educated on it, and then also educate your children. And don't leave it into the hands of the educators. I don't care how great they are. You are your child's best advocate. So go in with your voice and speak on behalf of your kid, and know you may not know all the professional jargon or language or have the professional wherewithal that educators have. But what you do know, and it needs no introduction, is your child.
Wow. Yes, you know your child than any other person. And if you don't start, the teacher will not help you. You've said
Yes.
it all. There is no comments I will add to this. What I just would say is, if you're live with us in the studio, please check in the chat. And I have put in Miss Clarice bio on LinkedIn, her page on LinkedIn in the chat, and please go follow her. You will learn so much from her. For those of you on YouTube, we will post the link also there for you, so you could check back and be able to have access to it, so you can follow her and learn about all the great work that she's doing. Today has been quite insightful, and I have to say a big thank you to you. This is the conversation that I wish I have the power to say that let's go another hour. But we will bring you back. We thank you for showing up and sharing about the great work you're doing. You have inspired me, and I believe that our audience watching here in the studio and also on the YouTube have benefited. Please do not keep this conversation to yourself. Go to the YouTube, take the link, share it to anyone. You have no idea who will chance on this. And one person, maybe one person's life is going to change by this conversation. But I definitely know it's not just one person. It's going to be many, many, many people. So please don't sit on it. Share it widely, and let's spread the awareness and see change happen. Do you have any last parting words for anyone? It could be educators, parents again, advocates again, or just somebody who is just interested to know what is going on. What are your last words?
My last words would be, until all children read, we have work to do. And so we all are part of the solution, and we all need to work together. I have learned on this journey so much. I didn't know everything when I started. And I would just say, if your journey is just beginning, keep learning, keep listening, keep reaching out to sources and resources. And if you've been on this journey a long time, I know that it can be isolating, and trying to change systems is not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight. But nothing that you do in respect to trying to change the narrative is for nothing. And so be encouraged, reach out, even if your support system is not in the same locality as you, there is support out there. I'm willing to be one of those supports. Rosalind, I know as well, and many, many others. And so you are not alone and you are not isolated, and your child is not a phenomenon that is hopeless. There is hope. We are hope, and we will create hope and opportunity and access. So God bless you all, and thank you for having me. And hopefully one day in the near future, I get to see you in person.
Very soon, like in few months, I'm confident that I'm coming to the US and I'll come and knock at your door and I'm like, hey, I am here. So
Come
be
on.
expecting me in Nebraska. And I'm
Absolutely.
made a mental note that definitely I'm going to attend 2025 conference. By the way, the Black Literacy
Yes.
Marathon Conference registration is up. And if you don't know, this is the opportunity to go to the US and learn more. It's a 2 days event, if I'm correct. And please head over to the link. Just type Black Literacy Matter. It will pop up and go through it. Has a very beautiful African inspired colors. And
Yeah.
you will immediately know that this is the one. We will also try and share the link as well so that you can be part of it as well. If you tune in today, we say a big thank you. If you're going to watch it later, we say a big thank you. Share this message with everyone. And as always, I'm asking if you're kind and you want to sponsor Dyslexia Global Conversation, our doors are open so that we're able to bring you more insightful conversations. Your support could take care of the internet we use. It could take care of some of the platforms that we use. And it could also, you can decide to just reach out to us for any other sponsorships that you have. It could be for training of teachers, for screening of children, to conduct a research. We are very open at the Africa Dyslexia Organization to engage with you. Also, our guest organization, Black Literacy Matter, is also open for partnerships and sponsorships as well. And so once again, we will post her link in the YouTube link, and you can follow her and engage with her if you like to support the great work that she's doing. Once again, my name is Rosalind, and it's a pleasure to be your host for this evening. Thank you so much, my sister. God bless you for sharing. And I know this is just the beginning. We are going to do so much together. God bless you.
God bless you too. And thank you, Josiah. You did such a great job. And
Oh,
Toby.
yes. Thank you for reminding me. Josiah, oh my God. Forgive me, my dear. You are like the speaker between, your work is so powerful, interpreting both of us, our conversations. I don't know how you do it. I probably don't want to know how you do it, but it's so phenomenal, Josiah. Thank you for interpreting with us today. And as I started, Josiah is with us as the sign language interpreter, and he is currently wearing a white long sleeve t-shirt, seated down in a blue chair, and he is dark in complexion. If you are listening in, this is the description of Josiah, and he has been phenomenal. Thank you so much once again, Clarice. Bye-bye, everyone, and to the team. Bye-bye, and thank you.
Bye.